to Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is a human strategist dedicated to empowering corporate decision makers to navigate the intricate landscapes of human potential. No other than Miss Jessica Martin.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Jessica. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. I'd be happy to. I have had so many experiences in human potential, consciousness, and specifically in the executive area. And I personally started noticing topics like what we're talking about, where it's like burnout, where it's the consciousness, stress levels, like all these things, right? And it happened years ago because I was in this spot where I was like working full time student, juggling family. I was like just getting exhausted. And we all get there, right? Where we're like, okay, I took on too much. Like, but then, how do you unroll that? And so I went through a lot of experiences myself. I ended up getting chronically ill, and because I was just so blinded by all the demands of society. And I just kept trying to meet all those check boxes we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be good at this and doing that. And I just got overwhelmed by it and ended up becoming chronically ill. And it took me years to recover from. So that set me on this journey of understanding physics, physiology of like the human body, the brain, psychology. I mean, you name. I went on like the spiritual, the body, the mind. Like I just clampered all of it into one, and spent years studying and going to all different universities, and also because of what I was going through, I was documenting a lot, and I started noticing some patterns. And then as I came out of this fog I had been in, I was seeing it all around me because at this point, like now I've been reprogrammed, right? And so now I was looking around at my peers at executive levels and going, oh my gosh, you're all this way and you don't even recognize it. There is so much more to life. And it just set me on this continuum that never ends now of human consciousness, and especially like how we integrate as executives the volume of technology and the demands we're going through.
Miss Jessica Martin, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. What subtle shifts in decision making, especially in chronic risk aversion, analysis paralysis, or impulsive choices, signal burnout but get dismissed as a strategic caution?
That's a really good point because there's a lot of there's a lot of noise out there, and people and media writing about burnout. But when you look at the actual studies of burnout, there are so many additional pieces to look at. It is way more complex than depression. If you look at the average burnout assessments, they really pair up closely with depression. And they're not wrong, but they're not giving us the whole picture. So when you're looking at these subtleties, it really is about the individual. And even a therapist has to go through and unpack all these other pieces of someone's life to understand burnout. When we're looking at burnout, there's two pieces to it. Mainly today, we're speaking to like the career burnout, right? Of the demands of executives. But there's also life burnout. And these are two very different types. So when we're looking at these subtleties, like you're talking about, like with the decision making, the fatigue that comes from these high profile roles, it boils down to having the resources. And that is the one common denominator that is like a key indicator is in a corporate work environment. And you, well, I shouldn't say just corporate because you do see it in entrepreneurs too. But the main indicator is a chronic situation where you are under high pressure, but you don't have the ability to perform because you lack resources. And this could be through people, financial, tools, software, and anything you could imagine. But when it continues and persists, people end up becoming burnt out. And then these other symptoms that you see start appearing. And a lot of times when you see these assessments, they do all correlate back down to a root cause of their inability to perform because they don't have resources. So when you're looking at the inability to make decisions and decision fatigue and all these other labels you want to put on it, it really is about your exhaustion of your mental capacity. The stress levels are high, and as our stress levels go high, our brain shrinks, right? Because it's getting flooded with uh, fluids. And as it gets flooded, we really go back to what some of like are familiar with, like the reptilian part of our brain. And it's a lot harder to make really strategic decisions. So, what we're looking at as a whole is if you're in this situation where you're having these problems making decisions, it's time to assess like the stress level of these chronic challenges you would have in your position, not just the day, not just the week. Like I've talked to people that they're like 5 years and they're already showing all the signs of burnout. And then someone might be 20 years, right? Every individual is different because each one of us is unique in past experiences. And so your whole life gets evaluated when you go and look at therapy for this because your whole life is what builds up your tolerance to these things. And so some people, might panic over their first cavity in their tooth, and someone else might be like, well, most of my teeth have had cavities, so it's not that big of a deal to go to the dentist, or vice versa. Maybe they're more panicked. You don't know their experience. And that's really what we're looking at when we're looking at this as an occupational challenge and illness. And it continues to grow. But when you're an executive, your whole job is to make decisions, and it's from every direction. You have a very large amount of people you are responsible for on an extremely high level. You're responsible for their livelihood, for helping them, for whatever's in the press about your company, right? There's so many pieces that they're juggling. And then you want to ask them what they want for lunch. They're like, I don't have time. So it's a different paradigm.
Very well said, Miss Jessica. Beautifully articulated. What is small habits like increase caffeine dependence, abandoning non-work hobbies, or avoiding eye contact are overlooked as a busyness, not distress?
I think when you're looking, well, first with the caffeine, like that definitely impacts your stress, but also it's in volume. Everything in excess, any type of food in excess, is not good for your body. You need just the right amount. For example, I love the taste of coffee. I love the smell of it. I love the taste of it. And if someone said you cannot have coffee anymore, I would be like, but that's my thing, right? Like I love it. So what I do, for example, in fact, I just had some before we started, but I but I drink decaf because it's the flavor I like of it, it's the smell I like of it. But I also know that I'm sensitive to caffeine. So I'll have things that are decaf that give me that same experience of like a warm beverage and what have you. So I wanted to kind of like isolate that piece and say, because like so many times we're hearing like, don't drink this, don't eat that, don't, all these do's and don'ts, and everyone's unique. So your situation might be completely different than mine. You might need caffeine to wake up, right? Um, but when we're looking at some of these other pieces and factors, you might be looking at this from a situation of your overall self awareness and impact on all these things you just brought up. Because you might have um, a situation where something is like you already have a lot going on and you're not checking in with yourself. And that's one of the things I consistently see is there's a detachment that happens, and people aren't staying aware of themselves. They're not staying present. They're not able to really even recognize that until someone else points it out. And then they kind of stop and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, when I was walking to that conference room, I hit my shoulder, but it's okay. And then that night, they're like, gosh, my shoulder really hurts. And they look at it and it's bruised because they really whacked themselves, right? But their awareness is so low and their adrenals are so high that yeah, they lose that attachment to themselves, that awareness to themselves. And it's physical, it's mental, it's emotional. There's all these different areas that we experience this. And I think that that's a core challenge that we see with people, honestly, in all of society nowadays, globally. It doesn't matter where you're at. I actually am not sure if I fully answered your question because I realized I
Yes.
was like starting to get very passionate about it, and I'm like, okay, stop.
Yes, indeed. Very well said, Miss Jessica. And how does physical presence without engagement, let's say vacant participation in meetings or delayed email responses, masquerade dedication while signaling exhaustion?
It's your desire to do it. When
Yes.
you're yeah, when you're excited and you're looking forward to something, you have an optimistic mindset. And in both scenarios, well, in all scenarios, your body is constantly dropping different hormone levels in your system to respond to experiences. But when you're just overlooking emails or not wanting to respond to them, like you're saying, coming late to meetings or doing any of those types of things, those are indications that you're overwhelmed, that you have too much on your plate. And it's okay to say no. Because if you're not wanting to do those things and you're not getting these things done on time, it's because you have a desire to not do it. And it's all about your boundaries and being able to, and it happens to me. I've been in meetings since 7 a.m. this morning. So for like 12 hours, it's just da 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 da, which is unusual. That normally doesn't happen. And I was laughing about it and I'm like, this is like, 2 decades ago. What is going on? um, but so many things happened and they all got rescheduled. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. But I knew that going into the day. And so I set myself up and I would start meetings by saying, I only have 10 minutes, or I will be back. This meeting needs to move, or, whatever the scenario was, because I didn't want to show up late. And because it gives a different perception to people about your level of caring, your level of engagement, and have you actually given your brain time to transition? And if you haven't done these things, they all build into the burnout and the stress and a whole bunch of different hormones drop in your body. If you're looking forward to things, you don't disregard them. And people get that confused because the stress just slowly creeps in. The noise of all of the abilities we have to be reached and communicated with, just all of a sudden, it could be a month, it could be 6 months, and you're like, I have no life. I have to schedule a restroom break. I have to schedule water, right?
Yes. Miss Jessica, as a human strategist dedicated to empowering corporate decision makers or making, what are your short term and long term goals?
Mm, eradication.
Eradication indeed.
Yeah, yeah, right. My whole goal is educating corporate America. It does not have to be this way. It doesn't need to be this way. The suffering is unnecessary. But what we have to do is we have to change our corporate structures. And and that's a whole other conversation. But the reality is burnout is a 76% rate of symptoms right now. And 66% have burnout and are ignoring it. And as you go through this and really like look at holistically what burnout is, and you really take the time to properly embed this in your corporation, you have a massive opportunity because what will happen is you'll increase loyalty with your employees. Your production and effectivity is going to go through the roof. There's study after study showing this. And at the same time, your employees will be freed to have creativity, open dialogue. Like everyone wants them, oh, tell us all of your ideas, like let's move forward, especially like with all these advancements with technology. Well, you have to have a different environment than the hierarchical environment we have currently. And so my overall long-term goal would be eradicating this so that we don't have these conversations. My short-term goal is to get into as many corporations and talking to as many executives as I can, and in a very short time showing them how to overcome it, and then creating and helping them in their own unique company and cultures design what works for them so that it can be perpetuated and sent throughout the corporation, and creating this new culture that so many companies want so that they are able to be globally competitive or continue to be the leaders in their industries.
Globally competitive indeed. And looking forward for your success and good luck to your goals, Miss Jessica. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be a human strategist like you?
Hmm. If you are super, super passionate about it, just start reading. I I I love books. I have a pile of books over here, and they're like every room in my house has piles of books. And go to do the research. And I mean, like this book is one that I just finished. I love it. It's called The Coherence Code, and it is the core of what I do. And I when I heard the book, I was like, oh my gosh! It was one of my professors who had actually suggested it to me, and I was like, oh, okay. And I read it, and I was like, yes, yes, the whole book. I'm like, yes. But it is whatever you are fascinated with when it comes to humans, if it's human factors, if it's consciousness, if it's strategy, dive into it and really own it and educate yourself. Don't just hear what's out there on all of the media. Truly dive into the research and the books from the professors so that you're able to have that education, and so that you can have discernment of reliable knowledge and create your own construct of what this means for you. Being a human strategist was something that came over years, and I have always been fascinated by human behavior, and that's where it originally started. Was just as a kid, like in elementary school, trying to understand why people were behaving the way they were. And it just continued to spiral, especially when I went on that journey of my own healing and really started diving into like global knowledge and spiritual knowledge and the science and the physics of everything and how it all works together and how we interact. And it just uh, so originally I was a project manager, and so I just already had like an organized linear thought process, but then you add in all of these other things, and it really became overwhelming. And now I spend most of my time consulting, and it'll be like sitting in a meeting and just observing all of the behaviors from tone and fluctuations. It's not just the body, right? It's all of the things. It's, you know, the noise. You can tell when someone's really busy, when someone's engaged, when people are nervous. But it's the very subtle things that you can pick up on with their energy, and you're like, okay, we need to go meet with this person afterwards. They became disengaged. It appeared that it was during this topic and this conversation, and like really analyze every type of experience. So that way, when you are trying to move things forward in a corporate environment, you never have to worry because you know you've got everyone on board, everyone's in agreement, or you were able to go have that conversation that was the next best new idea because they were thinking it and you noticed they were thinking it based off of like their behavior in the meeting. And so just being able to like consult and do a lot of that and then look at the whole overall culture at all levels of how people are behaving and then really diving in and understanding that company, you can create so many different strategies that break them through those barriers that they are stuck in that sometimes are super, super subtle. And then sometimes they're really, really big. But at least you have been able to analyze and collect all of that data, bring it back to them, and then really talk to them about what a best strategy is like looking forward. And the great thing is larger companies, a lot of times they have the own resources and talent internally. So it's always overlooked with all these consulting firms popping up everywhere that they go and execute everything and do everything. That's not necessary. Most of you have done a very good job hiring, and you just need to educate yourself and be open to the experience so that way you can grow everyone around you, which is just, again, going to be auspicious for all.
Thank you for your advice, Miss Jessica. And again, very well said. Beautifully articulated. And can you recommend a book that influenced your journey?
There's so many. Like I said, I read all the time. I did just finish the Coherence Code, and that was really great. There's a book called Your Brain is a River, Not a Rock. That's a really good one. I could make a whole list for you, so I'll stop there because I read about five a week. But those two are really profound when we're looking at these types of situations about human, like the actual brain and how it works. The nice thing is about the Coherence Code is it's through a storytelling. And so if you're like a very high, quick person, you're going to need to just take a breath and get a cup of tea and understand that this book is a story, but all the lessons are intertwined with it. And at the end, it brings it all back together. But it is the experience of an executive. And I really appreciate that because it highlights the different paradigms they're dealing with and the different things they're balancing and the experiences in those boardrooms. And then when you're looking at the Your Brain is a River, Not a Rock, that one's really good for understanding the human brain and how it interacts in situations like high performers and stress and how they have an impact on your decision making. And I think that that's super critical because one of the things that has always been found, and it's in several studies, but it's a consistent finding, is that individuals in EEG scans, individuals who are high performers, like amazing musicians, athletes, and executives, have a commonality in their brain pattern. And he goes into detail in it in that book. And I really love that it's some very short stories and a lot of research backing it. And in both scenarios, they're giving you some options and models to follow, like transcendental meditation, that is very effective for clearing out all that noise we're dealing with in our brains.
Thank you for your recommendation, Miss Jessica. And what internal narratives saying that I'm the only one who can do this? Do leaders use these rationalize ignoring their own limits?
Some do. Most of the time, uh, traditionally, leaders have been promoted and gotten to where they are because they were high performers and they were standing out because their ability to get things done. What we're finding now is that's not enough. You really have to be a people person. And so when you have that mindset, and whenever I see it in any leaders in a corporate environment or in a business where they have that mindset still of I'm the only one that can do it, they are setting themselves up for failure and burnout. And that really always stems back to ego, not talking about in an arrogant way, but ego in that's a mindset that they have in their brain. And the ego is driving them. When people start leading from other spaces and fully utilizing their full brain capacity, they don't have that. They're more strategic. They're looking around going, who can do this? Who can get trained to do this? Can we outsource it? They're asking these other questions to not do it themselves because they have so much knowledge and experience. Their best position is to sit back and be able to evaluate, analyze, and create strategies around all these moving pieces. And because they have to make the bigger decisions, somebody who is down in the weeds doing it, building presentations, maybe it's the shop floor. I don't know, right? There's all these different scenarios. But the ones that are going and doing that, sure, it's fun, it's nostalgic. You got to get out of your system sometimes. But if that is a consistent behavior or pattern, you're not being utilized to all this amazingness you have and these people's lives that you can inspire and touch and transform their experience.
Miss Jessica, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course, my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and of course, my food 101 in its fifth season as well. Geography 101 fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101 Love Letters in a third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in its fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Jessica, if leaders burnout erodes their team's morale or succession pipeline, is there a sacrifice truly serving the organization's future?
No, if your leaders are burnt out, it is not serving your corporation's future. That's bottom line. Like it's not possible because they're making decisions based off of reactive behavior, not proactive behavior. And so as soon as you get into this situation where you are being reactive, you are not making the wisest decisions. It's not healthy for the entire company.
Miss Jessica Martin, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy as well as your business itself?
Yes, I would love that. Every month, we run a burnout program. And we also come into companies, and you can find out more at jessicamartinllc.com or blissoutmentor.com.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Jessica Martin because if you support her more and more and more empowering leaders to come, more empowering people to come. Miss Jessica, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon.